other esteemed panel member of this program and dear participant. I'm very delighted and honored to share this platform with so many eminent academician, scholar, and especially with my teacher Anuradha ma'am. And for that, I'm really grateful to Professor Manoj Sinha sir for giving me this platform. So the topic which I'm going to deal today is focusing on one of the principle of international humanitarian law, and that is the principle of distinction. So I would like to start my discussion what Anuradha ma'am pointed out in her presentation, something called the practical approach of the conflict. If I will ask one question from all of you, whether a conflict can be completely stopped or not, I'm sure the answer will be no. So we are in a such kind of world, and and the conflict has become a so basic in the society that we cannot completely ban the conflict. You can take the example of UN Charter itself. Even UN Charter does not completely ban the war. The reason being is that there are principle of the self defense. So it means that we cannot stop the conflict completely. And here the pictures of IHL, I mean to say the IHL comes into the picture, international humanitarian law. And few of my previous speaker have already pointed out, Jyoti ma'am does talk about we need to humanize this armed conflict, and that's what the role of international humanitarian law becomes important. So when we talk about the IHL, there are two primarily aim of the IHL. The first one is to protect the victim of armed conflict, which is majorly based on the Geneva Convention. And ma'am has already pointed out that we have a four sets of treaty and which is universally ratified. And second one is to regulate the conduct in the hostility, the parties involved in the in conflict, which is majorly based on the Hague Law. So to regulate all this objective, there are certain core principle of international humanitarian law, and Rashmi ma'am has already pointed out few of the international humanitarian law principle, that is military of necessity, principle of proportionality, principle of distinction, principle of humanity. So I will be focusing on the principle of distinction. So what I'm going to do in my talk, apart from discussing what is this principle of distinction, I will also like to focus what are the contemporary challenges which has been posed to this principle of distinction, and what are the practical difficulty it's often faced when it's come to implement this principle of distinction in the battlefield. From a previous speaker, we have gathered that nowadays the non-international armed conflict are happening a more in number when we compare to the international armed conflict. And here I'm quoting the I'm quoting from the war report, which is published by Graduate Institute of Geneva, which has published with the detail that in what countries the non-international armed conflict are going on. So since the number of non-international armed conflict and the conflict which is happening in a one territory have increased more, have also created a certain kind of difficulty when it comes to the principle of distinction, because of the involvement of so many actors, especially the non-actors and some other organization. And apart from that, there are some other contemporary challenges which has been posed to this principle of distinction is the development in the technology. Anuradha ma'am was talking about the cyber war. So this technology has also posed the challenges when we talk about the principle of distinction. I will be, while as I further progress in my discussion, I will be highlighting this more in detail. So let me come to the point that what exactly the principle of distinction means. So in simple word, if I will define the principle of distinction, simply says that there is a need to demarcate, there is need to make a difference between a combatant and civilian. So in other words, only the military object should be targeted or not the civilian, and civilian should be spared into the conflict because they are not the party to the conflict. So before I tell you, the in detail what are this principle of distinction, let me tell you there are four important components which we need to understand to understand the phrasing and the purpose behind this principle. And what are these four components? The first thing is that who will be the combatant. We will look into the later that what are the definition of the combatant is given. Who all are the civilian? Who will fall under the category of civilian? The third is what are the military object does constitute? And the last one is what is the civilian object? So these all four terms are very important to understand in a detail what is the principle of distinction means. But before that, let me tell you certain legislative development which took place with regard to the principle of distinction. So the principle of distinction is not nothing a very new term which have just originated now. It was, from a way back of 1868, from St. Petersburg Declaration, we can follow this principle, where it was clearly stated the only legitimate object which a state should endeavor to accomplish during the war is to weaken the military force of the enemy. So it clearly says that the only object that a state should endeavor to accomplish is only to weaken the military forces of the enemy. In the sense, it also emphasizes the principle of distinction. So the only object, I mean to say, during the armed conflict should be the enemy or should be the object to weaken the enemy force. Coming to the Hague Regulation also prohibit the attack or the bombardment on, say, towns, villages, dwellings, hospitals, building, because it clearly prohibits that during an armed conflict, the civilian object should not be targeted. And for that, the principle of distinction becomes very important. When we come to the Geneva Convention, of course, now we have three additional protocol. Rashmi ma'am already pointed out the additional protocol 1, which deals with the protection of victim during international armed conflict, does codify this principle of distinction. And let me tell you the important article which does talk about the principle of distinction under protocol 1. It's article 48, 51 and 52. I will be telling you about all this article in detail later on. So not only the additional protocol 1, which deals with the international armed conflict codified the principle of distinction, but also the additional protocol 2, which specifically focus on non-international armed conflict, also recognize the principle of distinction under article 30. And at various occasions also, UN General Assembly have also pointed out that principle of distinction should be followed during the armed conflict situation. And one of the resolution is a 1968 resolution dealing with the human rights in the armed conflict. So these all are the, okay, there are one more. Now the Rome Statute International, through which the International Criminal Court has been established, also recognize this principle of distinction. It clearly says that any intentionally targeting to the civilian population or to the civilian who are not directly taking a part in the hostility will constitute a war crime under Article 8 from subclauses. So these all are the core treaty law which recognize the principle of distinction. But apart from this treaty laws, there are few judgment also which recognize the importance of this principle of distinction. And one of the judgment which I think Rasmi ma'am also pointed out in her presentation is the advisory opinion of nuclear weapon case. So International Court of Justice in its advisory opinion of nuclear weapon case has very clearly stated that this principle of distinction is a very important principle of international humanitarian law. And let me tell you, court has also quoted that this principle have attained the status of customary international law. It further stated that a state must make the distinction between civilian and combatant, and a state should not use any kind of weapon which cannot distinguish between the civilian and the military target. So this advisory opinion becomes very important to understand that this principle of distinction has attained the status of customary international law. And let me tell you, ICRC have also published in 2005 the list of the customary law, and that's very exhaustive work. And I think if I can recall, around 160 or 161 customary international law ICRC have found out which are applicable on international armed conflict or non-international armed conflict, or there are few uh, customary international law principles which are applicable on both kind of conflict. And one of the principle is the principle of distinction. So I hope you all must have understood that principle of distinction is not only recognized in the treaties laws, but also various judicial pronouncement and ICRC have also recognized, and it has become the it has attained the status of customary international law. So, and we all know that customary international law plays a very important role in case if any state have not signed the treaty. However, the Geneva Convention is universally ratified, but when we talk about specifically the say additional protocol 1 and additional protocol 2, there are many states who have not signed the additional protocols. So in that situation, the role of customary international law becomes very important, which can bind all those states even though they have not signed and ratified. So there's no doubt that principle of distinction is applicable to all the kind of conflict, no matters whether it is a international in character or non-international in character. So now I am coming little bit detail in the provision which I have highlighted in the beginning. uh, Article 43 of the additional protocol 1. So article 30 sorry 43, I'm sorry, it is article 43. So article 43 of the additional protocol 1, which talks about who will be the combatant. So, in a brief, let me tell you the combatant definition is a very wide, which is given under Article 43, which not only include the regular army, but it's also include the irregular forces, paramilitary forces, subject to a certain exception, excluding the medical and the religious personnel, even though they are a part of the armed forces, but they are exempted on that. When we talk about who will fall under the category of the civilian, there is again definition is given in additional protocol 1, which started with negative connotation, that who all are not the member of the armed forces will fall under the category of the civilian. And now coming to what would be the military object. For that, Article 52 of the additional protocol once becomes very important to understand what exactly the military object will be. And I'm referring Article 52, paragraph 2 of the additional protocol 1, which talks about the attack shall be limited strictly to the military objectives. It further states, insofar as the objects are concerned, the military objects are limited to those objects which by their nature, common location, purpose, or use make an effective contribution to a military action. So let me stop here and explain that what exactly this provision is trying to emphasize, that what would be the military objective and what would fall under the military objective. It does not say that this is something, will fall under the military objective. It says it depends upon what kind of nature of that object, what are the location, and what is the purpose. And in case if that object is targeted, will whether it will be helpful to gain any kind of military advantages, and that's all depend in the circumstances ruling at that point of time. So say a military van could be a the legitimate target under coming under the military object, or say a network, I mean to say the poles which is connecting with the network can fall under the military object. But the problem is that once it comes to say there are conflict where the hospital has been also targeted, which is actually protected under the international humanitarian law, and often the parties take the advantage of the few of the subjective nature which is involved in this definition, because ultimately it was the circumstances ruling at that point of time will determine whether this target will be the military object or not. A bridges can be a target if the parties involved in the conflict found that bridges might be used for the purpose of the transporting certain goods which can be helpful for the military purpose, that can also be a targeted. So this is something it's based on the circumstances ruling at that point of time, and sometimes it's create the difficulty to apply the principle of distinction, and sometimes party takes the advantage of by stating, look, we have found that there are worse circumstances ruling at that point of time, that's why we have targeted. And here the other principle also becomes the important, that's rule of proportionality and the military necessity also. There is a one interesting principle which article 52 talks about, the doubt. In case if parties involved in the conflict have a doubt whether this will fall under the military objective or not, the paragraph 3 article 52 clearly say it will fall in the favor of the civilian. So if the parties involved in the conflict, in case if they have doubt whether that person is civilian or combatant, they should presume that person is civilian subject to certain condition. So these all are the important provision which I was trying to highlight. I was trying to highlight. Of course, the law is very exhaustive and law have tried its best to define everything. But let me tell you, the conflict is, I mean to say, it is not possible to write each and everything in a black letter because of so much subjectivity involved or inherent in the nature of each conflict. And sometimes it's give the advantage to the party to misuse the provision. And of course, the ICRC has done a tremendous task to defining and producing the commentary on that. But still, as the things are changing, as the circumstances are changing, technologies are developing, there are always scope to improve further in the law. Now I'm specifically coming to the what are the challenges we see when we talk about this principle of distinction. So there are various challenges, but of course I will be focusing on the few challenges because of the paucity of the time. The first and foremost challenges what I have highlighted in my beginning of the discussion, the nature of the conflict which is changing. As I told you, the non-international armed conflict are happening more when we compare to the international armed conflict. So now it has also created the problem when we talk about the applying the principle of distinction in the ground reality. So the first challenge is what I have seen, that mingling of the civilian with the combatant. There are various conflict where combatant hide behind the civilian, or where civilian somehow try to assist to the combatant. That also create a problem to creating a distinction. Of course, the moment, as long as civilian I mean to say, the moment civilian started participating in the hostility, they will be no more be given the protection of civilian. But the problem is that when there is a I mean to say, the huge number of civilian where few are supporting, few are not supporting, and there is a confusion, it create a problem when we talk about implementing this principle of distinction at the ground reality. And one such contradiction is a very well illustrated in the case of conflict between Hezbollah and the Lebanese Shiite armed group, and between the Israeli attack, which happened in 2006, where Hezbollah have some support from the civilian, and Israeli government took the advantage of that by stating, rather than distincting or rather than applying the principle of distinction, they have simply launched the air bombardment or missile which can hardly discriminate between the civilian object and military object. And that's also the case we are seeing in Syria also. So these are all are the the few of the challenges we see. And of course, the increasing technology is also posing the challenges. We all are aware about the robot called Sophia, and we all have must have read or heard that future war is going to be fought between the robots. And Sophia, you all know that it's granted the citizenship by Saudi Arabia. So now this advanced technology is very helpful when we talk about the health sector, when we talk about the agricultural sector. But once it's come to the weapon advancement, because the technology have also involved in advancing the weapon, it has both pros and cons. When we talk about what are the advantage, of course it can reduce the casualty, it can help to precise the target. But on the other side, it can create a problem with regard to the international law principle, and specifically the principle of distinction. I will give you one example. Imagine there is a one weapon which is so much advanced in technology, and which has been made in a way that can recognize the tank which is used by the combatant during the conflict. Now the problem is that whether this weapon will be able to demarcate the tank which has been, say, put in some gallery or some museum just for the showing purpose to the public. So here the role of human being becomes very important. ICRC also support this, that human control should always be there when we talk about completely autonomous weapon. So these all are the few challenges I wanted to highlight with regard to the principle of distinction. I hope I could able to make some sense through my discussion. And thank you very much for patient listening. Over to Mehak.